Hey, it's Chris Chico here, and in today's video I want to share with you the 3 most important provisions of your real estate contract as a real estate wholesaler that you want to make sure that you know and understand exactly how you should structure them so that you have your best chance of getting the seller to accept the contract and you have the best possibility of being able to sell that property. Now, before I get into that, let's go to the intro. Okay, maybe I don't have an intro trailer yet, but don't worry, I'm working on it. Now, in this video, I am not going to be discussing the clauses and provisions, the legal stuff that needs to be in your real estate contract. I don't know what your state does, and so therefore, I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to get into are what I consider to be the most important 3 critical things and how to structure them in a contract so that now you have the best chance of getting the seller to accept the deal, and then you have the best chance of giving yourself the ability to be able to sell that to another investor. And I have them here in my fancy notes and my clipboard, very high tech, okay? Now, this presupposes that you are a real estate wholesaler. What that means is that you're going ahead and putting a property under contract, and then you're getting an agreement signed by the seller, and now you're going to sell that agreement to another buyer for a fee. So how do we structure this agreement that we have with the seller to give us the best chance to be able to do that? So let's talk about the first thing, and obviously there are a lot of different things to fill in a contract, but I'm just going to talk about the most important things that I think that you should be aware of. Number 1 is the inspection period. Number 2, there is the closing date. Am I yelling? Number 3, we are going to put the earnest money deposit. So I'm going to put in here deposit. So then now these 2 here, the closing date and the inspection period are very much linked together. So one of the things that I like to do in a contract is put what I call relative dates, not absolute dates. What do I mean by that? If I'm signing a contract with a seller today and I want to put a 10-day inspection period, I am not going to put the actual date. And the reason for that is because if I write up the contract today and I get it to the seller and he takes 2 or 3 days to get it back to me, and now I have a fixed date on the agreement, that causes a problem for me because in the agreement I may have wrote it up at the time to give me 10 days, but because the seller took too long, then now I have less time. And so I call that an absolute date, meaning that if I put in a date of, say, November 6th, I'm just using that as an example, I don't want to use November 6th, I want to say a number. That's number 1. So all of these I'm going to put as a number from the date of the contract. So in the example of the inspection period, my typical inspection period is 10 days. However, I'm going to come back to that. And the closing date I put as 30. That's what I put in. Why don't I put a longer date than 30? Well, because if I tell a seller that I'm going to close in 45 days, then that typically is going to just appear to be too long. I mean, you're a cash buyer. You're supposed to be buying my house cash fast. What's with the 45 days? Some people could argue that 30 days is too slow, but let's just say 30. What happens here is that when I put these days on the calendar, I make a very interesting distinction that many people don't really think through that would automatically give you more time. And the difference is that I put these numbers down in my contract as business days. Very important. So with the inspection period, I put in the inspection period that it is 10 business days after the fully executed contract. Now, why do I do that? Because 10 business days becomes more than 10 days. It becomes, because if you think about it, you've got weekends in there. So many times now that happens is that 10 days becomes more than 10 days. And depending on when it falls on, it could buy you an extra 3 days, extra 4 days, extra 5 days. If there's a holiday, it buys you an extra day there. The same thing with the closing date. The closing date to be on or about 30 business days, which then, if you think about it, 30 days has 2 weekend days. So we're automatically on the calendar giving us almost the equivalent of putting a 45-day closing date, but instead we're putting 30 days. So now those are the 2 items that I think are the most critical for you to get right, because you need the right inspection period. Now, I'm not a fan of, a lot of people say, well, gee, I'm going to try to sell it and wait till right before closing, and if it doesn't sell, if I can't sell my agreement before closing, then I'm just going to go ahead and back out of the deal or go back to the seller for a price reduction. I'm not a fan of that. If you're going to sell the contract, do your best to get it sold quickly. Don't wait to the last minute. Putting it this way is going to give you more time to be able to do that. Now, so that's the inspection period and the closing date. let's talk about the deposit. So that's a sticking point for most because you could do a couple different things. You could put 0 deposit. You can put $10. You can put $100. Or what if the seller asks you for $2,000 as a deposit? And so, couple things. Putting 0 as a deposit, I am not a fan of because I don't believe it's proper consideration. I don't like putting $10 also on the contract because I don't believe it's proper consideration. At the bare minimum, you should put a $100 deposit. What if the seller says to you, you know what, I want to sell you this property, but I don't think you're serious. You only have a $100 deposit? There's no way you're going to buy my house for $100. I mean, put my house off the market for $100. And I'm going to wait 30 days, and then what if you don't close? That's not for me. So one of the things that you can do is you can stagger the deposit. So let's say that I'm having a conversation with the seller. Let's say I put a $100 deposit and I want to make sure that the seller, knows that I'm serious about the property and that after the inspection period, if all goes well, then we're going to go ahead and commit to closing, which again, you're going to find a buyer within that period of time. So the way that I like to do it is I like to say, look, I'm going to put a $100 deposit today on the contract, and then after my inspection period, I'm going to put up an additional $1,900. That way, you can rest assured that, hey, we've cleared anything that could go wrong, and now we're in a position where we are committing 100% to closing on the deal. Does that mean that you have to put up the deposit? No. What you do is that you put a $100 deposit, and then when you find a buyer, the buyer puts up a bigger deposit. You never want the buyer to just put a $100 deposit. You want the buyer to put up a bigger deposit. You can do it a couple different ways. You can have the buyer bring $2,000 as a deposit to the title company, and then now as part of your assignment, you then that gets put toward the deposit that's required for the contract with the seller within the inspection clause. So then now you cover your base there. So now you don't have the chance of the seller saying, look, I want to sell you the house, but there's no way that I'm going to do that for $100. And if you don't have the money, you're going to lose out on the deal. In this scenario, you can tell the seller, Mr. Seller, look, I have quite a bit of properties. I think that yours is definitely going to be the one that's going to pass the inspection because of the fact that based on what you told me, everything looks to be okay. However, I can't be putting $2,000 with 10 different properties and have them all laying out there because then it takes a while for me to get the money back from the title company. So what I'll do for you is this. I'll put a $100 deposit. I'll do my best to get this done as quickly as possible. Once we get the all clear here, what I'll do is I'll put the remainder of the money so that way you can rest assured that I'm going to be buying that property. And you have your buyer put up that deposit. That's a great way of doing that. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm telling you what I do, not necessarily telling you what you should do. So you should always seek, your title company, whoever you're working with in your local area to make sure that this does not in any way violate anything that you shouldn't be doing. But in essence, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, look, in this competitive market, if you just put $100 and somebody comes in and puts, $4,000, then you're going to be at a disadvantage because they're going to seem more serious. But you can circumvent that by staggering your deposit. So it's $100 and then $2,000 and then the remainder of it in the 30 days. So again, what I wanted to do is do a quick video on what I consider to be some of the 3 most important provisions of the contract for you as a wholesaler to be able to have the seller agree to your price and terms and allow you the opportunity to sell your contract to another buyer and not have an issue of losing the deal. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, there's going to be a couple videos somewhere above me, below me, I don't know where YouTube is going to put it, so you can click on and watch some additional videos. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up. You can hit the little notification bell so that you can be notified the next time a video gets published, and it makes me feel good and lets me know that you care. This is Chris Chico, and I'm out of here.